Welcome to the Candlelit Tales podcast. My name is Sarah Hegarty and I'm sitting down here with my brother.
And my name is Aaron Hegarty and we are the co-founders of Candlelit Tales.
Yep, we tell stories and we set them to music. And without further ado, I think, we're going to crack on. We're going to have a chat about it afterwards. But Aaron, tell us the story of the Morrigan.
All right, so. The Morrigan, or the Morrigan, had three different forms, different faces, different guises she slipped and fell in behind. As such, she had three different names: Bav, Maka, and Anand. These three came together to be the Morrigan, or simply known as the Morrigan. In those three aspects, she had one craft of being able to see into the future. Her prophetic foresight allowed her visions of the future in which way to set strife alight. She had an overpowering lust and longing sometimes that this caused strife whether she wanted it or not. And in any case, her most powerful force of reckoning was her battle fury that she would cast down on anyone that did her wrong, or anyone she thought deserved it. Her home was in Rath Cruachan. Cruachan, the home of Queen Maeve, often had a hooded crow outside the window, and if you go there today, beware of three crows flying side by side. Beware not to stare one in the eye. For she had the power to change her shape into the battle crow and fly over the army coming towards them, like the first battle of Moichura, where those three, Maka, Bav, and Anand, flew over the forecoming armies and drowned and drenched them in rain of blood, to set their anger into fear instead. And then she burned and scorched them with fiery rain, and then for 3 days and 3 nights she set out such a shrieking that one of that army could get a wink of sleep, and drained them of all motivation for the following fight. She could be many things, the Morrigan. She could be a hag or a crone, spotted at a ford, washing blood that was soaked into the armour of any warrior that was going to meet his death that day. And she would smile at that warrior, knowing what fate had in store for him. She could be seen with red, powerful, flowing hair over her body, gleaming and bristling, lust-filled and longing for a warrior, like the day she offered her love to Cuchulainn, but he rejected her at the ford during the Pton Bo Cúna. She came at him in the shape of a wolf, a heavy red heifer, and the shape of an eel, and though he was able to defeat her that day, she became the harbourer and protector of his death, till the day he died, and she stood on his shoulder and called 3 times, announcing the death of the greatest warrior Ireland had ever known. Now Bav was lean and grey, slender and leggy, nimble and seeing, hovering and hopping over the points of spear and shield rim of the victorious army at the Battle of Moira. This big-mouthed, swarthy, swift, sooty woman, lame and squinting in one eye, was different to that look of Maka. She was beautiful and elegant, and she tried on the guise of being a domestic goddess for Crondon that time in Ulster, but maybe she had foreseen what was to come, because she was forced into a race one day against the king's horses just to prove a stubborn point. And when she lost the children she was carrying, while heavily pregnant though she won the race, she held them in a pool of blood, these 2 twins that she had lost, and she stared into the eyes of all the men surrounded her then and cursed them for not protecting her. And so Macha's name is still remembered in Ulster, in Owen Macha, that she gave her name to the fort of the king, the twins of Macha. And any man who fails to protect a woman in Ulster is reminded of the battle fury of the goddess of war. Now, the Morrigan was not known for being a motherly sort. She had many children, some say. We know little about all of them. She often slept with the Dagda, the great, big, beautiful, bountiful man. She had Bridget from that coupling, but she offered that child up to be suckled by another, for she did not want or care for it. And so in the other world Bridget was raised and came back into this world, turning her cloak and becoming a saint. There is a story of one child the Morrigan loved. His name was Mecky. Mecky was born, he was sick and weak. The Morrigan loved this child. Each one of the bright, beautiful faces of the Morrigan shined down onto this child and held it in nurturing embrace. So much so that she wanted this child to grow to be able to face the rough, hard world out there. And in his weakness and sickness, she cuddled and coddled him and minded him. So much so she forgot about her battle fury and rage. She just wanted to protect this child. All of her female strength came and was given in to this child. And when Dean Keck, the great physician of the Tua de Danann, came to look upon him, he exclaimed in shocked horror. This child, he explained, had not one heart, not two, but three, and inside the center of those 3 hearts there grew a tiny serpent inside, slithering around in the blood of Mecky. And when he grew, his hearts would grow, and those serpents would grow too. And when he grew to be of age, those hearts would grow, and out of his rib cage those serpents would rip their way into the world, spreading fire and destruction and ruining the entire world with blood and fire and hellish shrieks. But the Morrigan was not afraid of this. She thought if her son would die, the rest of the world might as well be destroyed. Dean Keck tried to reason with her, telling her that this child must be put to death. Surely this is the best thing to be done. But the goddess of battle fury threw Dean Keck out of her home, not listening to this advice. Now the Tuatha had a problem, and McCool McKeck the Macronia, the son of the wood, the son of the plough, and the son of the sun, well, they conspired and they set about a way of taking the Morrigan away from her home. They planted the seeds of war between 2 tribes, and so when the battle flags were raised and the drums rolled and the spears were gleaming, shining high in the sky, the Morrigan was called to her duty. And she folded over her feathered cloak, transforming herself into that hooded crow. As she took to the sky, she went about shrieking and flying over the armies as they went towards one another, and she now waiting for the death and slaughter to happen. McCool took to his chariot. While the Morrigan was distracted and taken away from her home, he went just where Mecky was. He took his great hounds of war with him, and they leapt and tugged and pulled at the restraints and leads he had on them, and by the time he got to the house of the Morrigan, he saw a boy playing, and he unleashed the hounds. The shriek of the boy came to the ears of the Morrigan as she flew over the battle with death below her. She knew it was a shriek of her own son, and so she folded her cloak down and around, and taking to the ground, she put her feet down, transforming once more to be the Morrigan. In full form, with a shock of red hair, she stared around. She saw the ground with blood and scratches, paw prints and fingernails, and she looked and she touched that blood, and from a vision she was struck with her boy, her Meki, being ripped apart by dogs and teeth and snarls and bites. And she followed the tracks that led her down to a stream, and there she saw ashes burnt. And when touching those ashes, a vision came to her of this child of hers, this weak, this weary, this tiny, defenseless Meki, being plunged and stabbed 3 times through the chest. Each one of his hearts, each one of those snakes were destroyed with every one of those stabs, and he was thrown onto a huge fire that consumed him all, and now nothing but ashes remained. The Morrigan fell to her knees, and in a voiceless cry she screamed, and the water ran away. The ashes of her boy flew into the sky and damaged down onto the ground. This river would never run again, as she made a voiceless promise that she would rain destruction down on the world of men, rip them through with fire and blood, and set out so much shrieking from men and women for all of the death and destruction she would lead on from that day. For the death of her son Meki, no one would ever be free from strife and of ruin and of anger as long as the Morrigan was alive, and she stays behind the veil of the other world. Still to this day she watches, she waits, she sets the seeds of strife in amongst the dreams of men, and she follows it still to this day, with fire and blood and screams for the death of her son, Meki.
Welp.
Yeah.
That won't make you less bloodthirsty.
I mean, sure.
I don't know if that's what they were going for. I'm pretty sure they were just trying to murder the apocalypse child.
I guess so. You know, it's a story about the Morrigan. It's one of many, I guess.
It's one of many. It's one of the few ones, I suppose, where she's a character on her own, and it's not like she's adjacent to a war that's going on and kind of interfering in it.
Before we go on, and this is the part where we have the chat about the story, by the way, we do love doing these podcasts, and if you want to hear more of these podcasts and help us out, go to patreon.com/candlelit tales and throw us a €2 or a €5 or a €10 or whatever you think you might be able to help us do the podcast, because these are deadly and people are supporting us and it's making us able to do them. And I'm going to ask you, Sorika, about a few things that I don't quite get about the Morrigan. You've told me a lot about this great goddess of war. This is one of the stories of the Morrigan. Actually, Angel Hannigan, a performer with Candlelit Tales, she and an actor and a singer herself, she found that story and brought it to us. We crafted it, co-created it, I suppose, and have retold it a number of times. It's one of the sides of the Morrigan you don't always get to see, this kind of like light side, motherly side. I mean, like, she's a loving side.
I don't know if I'd call it a maternal side necessarily. I mean, Meki seems to be the only one of her children that she particularly cares for.
Any maternal instincts towards.
Yeah, I mean, she has a number of daughters. Bridget, most famously, I think, being her daughter. I can't think of any of the others off the top of my head. Although warrior women like Skahak and Aoife are sometimes referred to as being daughters of the Morrigan.
Again, is that a figurative thing? Like you're embodying the Morrigan, or?
I have no idea.
Right. That's
Nobody
the problem.
does.
So what's the story with the? Like,
Oh,
why
yeah.
isn't it Morrigan?
The is important. The Morrigan is the goddess of battle fury, but she's a triple goddess. So she's got 3 aspects. Now, whether these 3 aspects are like sort of different sides of the same person, or whether they are 3 kind of separate entities that come together into the battle fury goddess, we don't know. This is the thing about Irish mythology and Celtic mythology in particular, is that like we don't know an awful lot. There's an awful lot that we don't know, and there's an awful lot because it was very deliberately suppressed and erased. A lot of what we have left are kind of, fragments and guesswork. And I mean, I know we in Candlelit Tales we definitely exploit the fragments because we often talk about how we join dots. And I think it allows an awful lot of space for a creative process to take those bits of stories and put them together into a more coherent narrative.
Yeah, sure, and that's why it's been passed down word of mouth. It's been passed on, and it's not a full, pantheon or very well prescribed number of gods and goddesses like the Greek pantheon.
No, we don't. And like the Greeks, one of the reasons the Greek pagan tradition is so well remembered is because the Greeks developed a writing system quite early on. So they were able to write stuff down long before the arrival of Christianity. Whereas we didn't.
Was a bit hard to get a lot of text into, wasn't it?
Was
scratching shit off rocks. Like
was really a kind of a grave marker thing. Nobody was writing books in Ogham.
Hey, I'm here on a hill.
Yeah, like you get,
or something.
It's mostly names on grave markers. That's mostly what we have in Ogham. Yeah,
okay.
And you have it coming up in stories where like Cuchulainn carves in Ogham writing on the top of a hill like a warning. You cannot pass here, and you've got kind of little.
I mean, that's super
markers
hard
like
to
that.
figure out how he did. Like, even you cannot pass here. Like, that's a long thing to write.
I mean,
on a big rock. Like,
anything is a long thing to write on a big rock, Aaron.
That's what I mean.
It's going to take you a long time.
In ages. Okay, so come here, tell me more about this triple aspect of this goddess. I'm always interested. Like, it's Macha, Morrigan, and Bav. But
yes, but it's possible that the Morrigan is the 3 goddesses who are separate entities, in which case it's Macha, Bav, and Nemen.
Right.
And the 3 of them together are the Morrigan, but the Morrigan is not a person in herself. Or it's possible that the Morrigan is the Morrigan, and Macha and Bav and Morrigan are like aspects of her, different kind of guises that she wears.
Like, she's sound when she's Macha, she's a bit bitchy when she's Mav, she'll hate you when she's Morrigan. Is that kind of thing?
That kind of thing, I guess. But again, like, this is something that we know very little about. So some of the aspects that she appears in, just to like give you a flavour. She appears as the washer at the ford, which is also Bav. This is an omen of death. Now, this is, I think, an interesting thing about the Morrigan as like a war goddess, because she doesn't actually do a lot of fighting. There is a story of her killing one of the kings of the Fomorians and passing out handfuls of his blood to passers-by.
That's nice.
Yeah, but she's very often more of a psychological warfare person. Like,
right.
she strikes terror into people's hearts. And the washer at the ford is this death omen. And you see it in the story of Cuchulainn's death, where he comes to a ford, he sees an old woman washing armour. And it's his armour. And she's washing blood out of it. So, like, you're all shiny and going out to fight in a war. You pass a woman washing blood out of a uniform and it's got your name on it. That's gonna mess you up.
Also, like, here, give us back me fucking armour. Like,
Well,
I need that.
She doesn't take it off you, Aaron. It's a vision.
But, like, I need my armour. Obviously, I'm going to die for all my armour. You know?
Aaron.
Sorry. Plot hole? No. Okay, ow. That was my head. For that big whack that you heard there, that was my head.
That was a tiny little flick.
Lovingly whack. She's
and you're being a baby.
The goddess of war.
Being a huge baby. Goddess of battle fury.
Battle fury.
Yep. Goddess of battle fury. So she does this psychological warfare thing. Another thing that she does is she rains blood down on armies, and she shrieks all night so they can't sleep. So she's that
And
kind of a.
rains fire down them as well.
She does a bit of fire raining down on them
one
as
of
well
the battles.
in one of the battles.
That would fuck with you, like that would definitely
Mess you up.
And question the whole god, goddess, battle fury or no, how did people worship these, the god of, do you go out and kill someone, go thanks crow, there
So
you go.
this is the funny thing, and this is again another one of those gaps.
Don't go
that
out
we
and kill
fall
anyone,
into.
by the way, and tell them I told you to do that. That wasn't a
Yeah,
invitation.
no, it's all on you if you do
No,
that.
don't credit me in that one.
Don't
Sorry.
credit us.
Carry on. That was more a leading question for you to explain.
Gods and goddesses
Yeah.
of the Celts.
There
So
you
this
go.
is actually a translation problem. We have an idea that a god and a goddess is somebody to be like worshipped. That you should build an altar to them and maybe make a sacrifice or say a prayer, because that's kind of the tradition
Catholic
that.
Ireland.
Well, Catholic, Abrahamic religion, to be honest, get together in a temple.
Abrahamic, what's that now?
That refers to the
Abraham.
Abraham, who was the father
I'm
of
with you.
Christianity, Islam, and Judaism.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So yeah,
I learned loads of stuff in this podcast.
you sure do, tangent man. Sure do.
You sure do. I sure do.
Sure do, buddy.
I sure do. We
So-
could edit that out, but we won't.
You're a feckit. So yeah, these are not actually gods and goddesses in that way. These are characters in like a poetic tradition and in a storytelling tradition. So you didn't pray to the Morrigan. You didn't like ask for her intercession. That was not what was going on there. But we use the word god and goddess because it's kind of a word that we understand, but it kind of gives a little bit of a false idea of what was going on there. Because these are not a pantheon of gods that are worshipped. So if you think of like, say, somebody like the Dagda, who's the good god, and he's very associated with hospitality, you wouldn't like dedicate your feast to the Dagda. But if you hear a story where there's a feast and the Dagda is the host, you know it's the best feast ever.
Right.
So, like, I went through a Wiccan phase as a teenager, as a lot of teenage girls do. You know that
Oh, what?
a witch phase.
Ah,
You know that phase that teenage girls
Yeah,
almost
yeah.
universally go through, where they're
goth
like,
phase.
I am now going to do magic and put curses on people because,
Alright.
sure.
Weird, very spooky. I heard a thing fall over outside. It was the witches.
It was the witches. It was
Right.
clearly the witches. So I went through a Wiccan phase as a kid, and it's kind of a neo-pagan tradition. And by the way, I don't mean to like say that as like Wiccan is a phase, because it is actually a very powerful belief system for some people who keep to it. I didn't. But a
We're
lot
not
of
being
it was.
dismissive of witches. We're just saying.
Yeah, no, I'm
you
just
went
saying
through a
that
phase.
for me it was a phase.
We're trying not to piss anyone off. Basically, don't hex us. Carry on.
Yeah, exactly. I fully believe in that shit, so don't.
I'm on the fence about it, but don't hex me either, please. Carry on.
You're not on
Your
the
hand
fence
is in
about
the air. You're going to make a point.
You keep interrupting me.
I mean, it's very enjoyable. She looked at me if looks could kill, lads.
It was a hex.
Oh, fuck it.
Because I forgot my point. You kept interrupting me.
I think it was something to do with hand in the air.
No, what I'm talking about is neo-paganism.
That's right.
What I'm trying to make a point about is neo-paganism. That for neo-pagans, there's a lot of, like, by necessity, because these are traditions that were deliberately suppressed and destroyed. Because if you're somebody who believes in Christianity, this is the same as devil worship. So these are traditions that had to kind of be eradicated by the church in Europe from their point of view. So if you're into kind of neo-paganism, you have to bring a lot of imagination to it, and you have to actually kind of try and reconstruct imaginatively what the pagan rites and rituals were, because we don't actually know.
Okay.
And I think that's really interesting, because I think it's something that, a lot of neo-pagans will acknowledge this, not all, that you're having to kind of somewhat make it up. And I think it's always interesting to kind of go, okay, but none of us are outside of the culture and the tradition that we grew up in. So even if you're doing things as a rejection of and as a reaction to a different faith system, I think that's really interesting, because you're going to end up fusing. And I think the way that we talk about gods and goddesses is just kind of an example of how that gets sort of muddied and fused.
Yeah, no,
because
clearly.
a lot of neo-pagans will do rites where they worship and they call on different gods and goddesses, which I just think it's really interesting that that's not necessarily what they would
and
have
we
done.
don't know what they would have done really. We can't go back in time, we can't check. And I just want to ask and just clarify, because I'm getting this image every time you say neo-pagan. Were these lads wearing neon lights and going around the place like, yeah, is that what you mean? What exactly is a neo-pagan? I just keep on thinking of neon lights every time you say it.
A neo-pagan is somebody today who calls themselves a pagan.
Right, so modern
And
pagans.
a modern pagan, well, to clarify that.
Nothing to do with neon.
No, I don't know where you got that
I don't
from.
know, my brain did it to me.
You were just looking up a site about neo-pagans.
I mean,
And
yeah,
you literally just looked at
that's
some
probably
stuff.
why. That's probably why.
But like the stuff like the Bealtaine Festival at Ishnok,
Yeah.
where they light all the fires.
Yeah.
Right? The stuff like, those kind of pagan raves that are going on.
Yeah, I mean,
Like anybody who's now I should actually clarify that anybody who's in part of a pagan tradition that has been disrupted.
right.
So there are pagan traditions in the world, and there are traditions of worship, and there are traditions of religion and animism that have a continuity to them because they haven't been
Yeah, of
eradicated.
course,
and there's an ancestral line there, and there's a tradition there, and it's not broken or it's not breached. In the same way, but I think when you're talking about European paganism, for the most part, this is people who are trying to piece together something that existed here a long time
belief
ago.
system that existed a long time before, kind of
Yeah.
mono.
So there isn't really a continuity of belief. There's no continuity of passing it down.
Okay. Well, since you mentioned it, I'll just have to give the Pagan Rave lads a shout out, because that's what I was looking at, and that they're amazing in terms of what they've done with their costumes and stuff. And Billy McFlynn was interviewed on the Blind Boy podcast. That's where I came across him, was chatting to him over the email, and he's done loads of work. He's fantastic, and he's done a little bit of work with the Puka Festival, which is basically a revival of Samhain in Louth and Meath, and we're delighted to be going up there.
Yeah,
at
that's
the
going to
end
be
of
fun.
October and the start of November. Delighted to be part of. They rang us. It was class. So thanks for that. Whoever passed that one on. So I guess it's kind of funny, because on the Pagan Rave Facebook site I saw a few weeks ago, there was, oh no, the Catholics are onto us, lads, and I pasted a little book about Catholic voice. A fella called Francis Leonard wrote basically a message out to his people to try and boycott the thing on faith matters. And it was a Catholic magazine or Catholic paper, and he was warning people about the devastating effects of pagan worship and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of, a lot of people were laughing at it on the site, or making jokes about it. And, it's kind of it's nearly absurd in my mind, in my point of view, that you would have people going, oh no, avoid. But our parents' generation and before that, any mention of paganism was...
Well, it was like I said before, if you're operating from a worldview where Christianity, Catholicism is the one true religion, anything else is devil worship.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you see in your country young people going towards paganism, that is the same thing as young people going towards devil worship. That's scary. And I think I actually think coming from the worldview that he's coming from, he's making a very valid point. Now, I don't come from the same worldview as he does. I don't think there's any one true religion. And I don't think paganism and devil worship are remotely similar to each other.
Right.
But I also think that there's not much value to be had in laughing at people with a different worldview to yours.
Sure.
Because all it does is it reinforces the cohesion of the group that you're already part of.
Yeah.
And it
yeah.
further ostracizes people who are not part of your group. And that's a really big problem in the world today, man.
True.
Like,
But,
beyond this
Yeah, beyond this.
particular little festival in Ireland that's about... Because it's the Puka Festival's idea is basically the point is that Halloween was originally Samhain, and all of this stuff about dressing in costumes and trick-or-treating actually dates back to Irish pagan tradition, and was then became kind of Christianized as All Saints' Day and All Hallows' Eve. Which is Halloween.
Over. Yeah, but it couldn't take over the Americans.
Well, that's the thing. It was Irish immigrants. It was Irish immigrants to America that brought these traditions with them, and the what we think of as modern Halloween, with the pumpkin carving, Irish people used to carve turnips.
Yeah.
Which
they were
like,
harder.
man,
Oh, man.
I can see why they switched to pumpkins because turnips are really,
So
really tough. But
tough,
also Google turnip lanterns because those things are fucking terrifying. Like they look horrifying. They do look like shriveled, beheaded like actual heads.
Actual heads, yeah.
They look like shrunken heads, which makes sense because, you know, Ireland was a headhunter culture. That was what warriors do in the Táin all the time. They take heads as trophies.
I mean, there's an argument to say that there's still people in the Amazon that are headhunters, probably pagans.
Yeah, there are tribes. And you know that was what Irish people. That was what the Celts did. They made little missiles out of the brains of their enemies.
It's always a good thing to do with brains. On that note, lads, I think we've summarised what the Morrigan stands for. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast.
I wanna bring us back to say one more thing about the Puka festival and the kind of discourse that's going on around it, though,
Sure.
because I think it's just an interesting layering of like there's a pagan festival that is Christianized, that is now in the process of being re-paganized.
Yeah, that is a very interesting onion that you have.
Isn't
going
it?
on there.
I just think that's kind of cool because what it says to me is that this time of year is important.
Right. No matter, for every faith.
Yeah.
For every body. Because we've just entered into, like, it was just gone, not when you're listening to it now, but it's recently after the autumn equinox. And so we've passed into the dark half of the year. And all of a sudden we're aware that the harvests are being brought in. Like, if you go back, all these, the lunar calendar and the solar calendar, all based around plants and how a harvest and where you're getting your food from, and all
like,
these festivals are built up around that.
It's particularly important in Ireland. Now, you know, it depends on where you are in the world. There are some parts of the world where you kind of only have 2 seasons, and you don't. The closer you are to the equator, the less variation you have in daylight.
Wet and dry.
But in Ireland, it gets really, really dark in winter.
Yeah.
Like you get very few hours of sunlight this far north because we're the same kind of latitude as Moscow.
They must go mental altogether in Iceland, like.
They do.
They literally
like it's
do.
a huge problem where people, you know, those kind of lands where you get the midnight sun in the summer and you get the 24-hour darkness in the winter.
People don't sleep during the summer, and then I don't even sleep during the summer.
It messes with your circadian rhythms, and it really messes with your you know, mood as well, like seasonal affective disorder. So
I get super done. I have done always for winter. It's just like I have to like pump myself up going into the dark half of the year. I'm like, okay, come on, you can do this. Just, you know, spirulina into you and the vitamin D and all that kind of jazz.
Listen,
and just, you know,
some of us love it. I'm very excited about the dark half of the year. It's always my favourite time. Until about February when I'm over it, and it's not over yet.
Yeah.
But for like, this is actually my favourite time of year.
I'm terrified. Like this is the time of the year that I most associate with like depression, getting down, low energy, trying to pick yourself back up again, and like just flump, you going up and down with your mind and body. And
you gotta allow yourself to move with the cycles.
Yeah.
This is not a time of year. This is a time of year for like. There's a lot of energy around this time of year because it is that gathering in and it's that shoring up of resources.
Celebrating of
celebrating of what we have, celebrating of abundance because there's such natural abundance this time of year. But also like gathering around
everywhere. It's class.
Gathering around
and mushrooms if you want to pick mushrooms.
Gathering around of community.
Yeah, with
getting people in around the fire.
And blackberries.
And like marshalling your resources going into that dark time.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Like that's what this time of year is for. So I feel like this is always a bit of an uplifted time.
Yeah.
And then in the winter time it's a different rhythm. And it's just a slower pace. And I know that I have difficulties when I either fight against that too hard or when I give into that too much.
Yeah, it's a funny balance to strike.
But there's a balance at which I think you can just kind of be kind to yourself, go with your energy levels, and actually kind of try and enjoy the good things about it.
Yeah, and that's why we started Candle Tales 5 years ago now, and we started it this time of year, and it's always the loveliest time to gather together to tell stories. It's the warmest atmosphere. It's people coming out with the jackets on and huddling together and having a little hot drink and tea and whatever, you know, and it's just warm and cozy because people in communities come together for that kind of stuff. And I hope you're nice and warm now and keeping safe and dry and looking after yourself, because we're going to wrap up this podcast now. I think we've gone on a little bit longer than we had planned.
Well, if you would like to support us in this, again, you can find us at patreon.com/candlelit tales. Keep an eye on that, because I'm going to be doing some stuff and posting some stuff. And we're also going to have some new rewards coming.
Yeah.
Merchandise.
We have some merchandise. We have.
We are not going to say any more about that at the moment, though. So have a look at the Patreon page, and you can also find us on social media. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook. You can drop us a line, info@candlelittales.ie.
And thank you for everyone who's mentioned us and supported us and told us, oh yeah, that podcast that you put up that is only 36 seconds long on Spotify. Nice one for that, by the way. That fell through the trap. Anyway, sorting that out. Thanks for we just got a new Patreon support today. Thanks for buying me coffee. Literally €2 coffee.
Yeah, no,
Happy
every bit helps. So thank you for listening, because we love telling stories, and there is no point in doing that if nobody's listening. So
yeah,
thanks for that, lads.
Oh, this podcast was produced by Oisín, and I told a story. My name is Aaron, and the music was by Oisín Ryan. That's all for us, folks. Thanks very much for listening, and get in touch, and we'll chat to you soon. Keep safe, and yeah, good luck. You.